The Chicago Bears are surging in the NFC playoff race and right now hold that last spot in the playoffs. And with me, my guest, Chicago Bears fan, Cameron Kemp. Thank you for being on here, and I really appreciate you being a part of this. I knew as soon as I started seeing the Bears starting to get hot that I know I needed to find the biggest Bears fan I knew, and I knew you were the one.
That's me. Been hanging in there study since 1984 with them. So, yeah, I've been through it all. Mostly downs, but a few ups here and there.
You said 1984 was when you became a Bears fan. What drew you to the Bears?
My dad was a Colts fan, and when the Colts left Baltimore, it just crushed him. Like, he really stopped watching football there for a time, so I was kind of lost. Like, I'd always been a Colts fan because he was a Colts fan. And I kind of remember liking the Redskins a little bit. Like, I loved John Riggins, like that year. But I was like, kind of like I just wanted a different team. I wanted somebody to root for. In '84, the Bears were good, and I remember watching their little playoff run or making it to the playoffs. But then I really remember them getting beat down by the San Francisco 49ers in the '84 NFC Championship game. And I remember, feeling bad for them. Like, their starting quarterback was out, McMahon was out. They just had no chance. Defense hung tough all day, but it was like at that point, I was like, I love Mike Singletary. I fell in love with the way he played. Walter Payton, and I was just like, man, this is the team I'm going to start rooting for, and that's just really fell in love with them that season. And really, it's weird that I fell in love with the team during a loss, but that's really when it happened.
To you, in your mind, what has been the biggest Chicago Bears moment that you can always recall?
It would be easy to say the '85 Super Bowl, but I think the '85 Super Bowl was kind of anticlimactic because the upsets that happened in the AFC, you just knew the Bears were going to go in and crush New England. For me, it was the playoff run in '85, shutting out the Rams, shutting out the Giants, back-to-back shutouts. Nobody had ever done that in the history of the NFL in the playoffs. The NFC Championship game, beating the Rams. It started snowing in the fourth quarter. The Bears scored a defensive touchdown. Wilbur Marshall, who later went on to play for the Redskins, scored a defensive touchdown in the snow. And for me, it was that moment. Like, it still gives me goosebumps to this day.
Looking at the season coming in, Matt Nagy back again for another season, the acquisition of Nick Foles, what were the expectations coming into the season for the Bears?
I thought we could be like a 10-6 team, of a solid playoff team, maybe even 11-5. The worry was naming Mitch the starter told me that something wasn't clicking with Foles early on, in training camp. I thought they really had brought him in to be the starter. I thought they were moving on from Mitch. So that's about where that was. Or preseason, like I said, I thought we were going to be a solid playoff team. Just mainly because of our defense. We had a top 5 defense going in. Made some acquisitions with Quinn coming in. I thought that would help us a lot more than it has. But, I thought we'd be a solid playoff team.
Seeing how Nagy, his coaching, what is it that stands out to you about how he manages that team?
Well, him giving up the play calling is actually – it's the switch back to Trubisky, but I think him giving up the play calling has actually fueled this run. We've had a lot of offensive line injuries throughout the season. He's a good motivator. The guys play hard for him. I'll give him that. You can tell that. You can see that. But I don't think being a young second, third year coach, handling the game situations and also calling the plays is a lot for anybody. And I don't think he was, as Bears fans, we complained about his play calling all season. So for him to have the guts to say, hey, I'm going to step down. I'm going to let somebody else make the play calls. I'm still going to be involved in the game planning, but I'm going to let somebody else make the play calling, and that it's improved our run game. It's improved everything pretty much ever since he stepped down as the play caller.
Was there a particular moment where you felt this team is bound for the playoffs?
When we beat Tampa Bay on Thursday Night Football, a lot of our earlier victories, Detroit, the Giants, Carolina, some subpar teams, I didn't think were going to be in the playoff run, but going to Tampa, beating Tom Brady on Thursday night, I thought that kind of solidified it. I said, Foles came in. He didn't play great, but he made the big plays when he had to. And I said, well, this is what we've got now. This Foles is going to lead us. The defense is going to be able to hold teams to under 25 points, 20 points. And I thought that was the moment where I thought we were a real contender.
Where did you see a point in the season where this team wasn't going to be there?
Shortly after that, I think the 6-game losing streak started right after we beat Tampa Bay. So it started rolling downhill after that. Like I said, we had at one point we only had one starting offensive lineman in the lineup for like a 3-week stretch. And with your in the NFL, your backup lineman, you may have a backup center, but your other backup linemen that you don't foresee starting are you're trying to find versatile guys that can play either guard or tackle. And I think we just had to find that right combination of, like, we have a guy that's played center, guard, and tackle for us this year. So it's a combination. It's finding that right combination of offensive linemen to play as a unit. The offensive line play is you play as five. You play as five guys doing one job. And once we found that and made the switch back to Mitch, and it got our running game going again, that's been what's turned the season around. But yeah, that 6-game losing streak, not many teams can fight their way back into a playoff spot after a 6-game losing streak.
Holding on to that last spot, who do you feel they match up the best with in the NFC playoffs?
Well, I mean, any team from the NFC East, obviously, was just it's just a down year for the NFC East. The Redskins have got a tough defense. It looks like the Cowboys might sneak in, and the Cowboy jokes have just been all season, and now they might sneak into the playoffs, so who knows? I wouldn't mind seeing Tampa Bay again. Like I said, I think our defense matches up well with what they have with Brady, getting the pass rush on him. He's always in the same spot in the pocket. I think that helps. Seattle, they don't have a very good defense this year. I think we could move the ball on them. And I think we could corral Russell Wilson and keep him in the pocket a little bit better than most teams do between personnel and scheme. I think those are the teams I wouldn't mind seeing.
So who in the NFC playoff race is it that you don't want to see? I'm assuming it's the two you didn't mention, New Orleans and Green Bay.
Yeah, we played a close game with New Orleans. We lost like 25-23, and that's when we weren't getting very good quarterback play. I think we could play tough with them, but they are tough. But I don't want to see Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is 19-5, counting the playoff games. He's 19-5 against the Bears. He always kills us. He always makes it look easy. We've got a good defense, but we can't seem to cover Adams. He always scores a couple of touchdowns against us. That would be the team in the playoffs that, like I said, just because of history and recent history, it's just we don't play well against Green Bay. We don't match up well against Green Bay.
Did Trubisky losing the job become a wake-up call for him, especially once Foles was out of action?
Yeah, Mitch is he's so hard to figure. There are spots in every game where you're like, okay, he can do this. He can play this position in the NFL. I don't think he'll ever be a star. I think a lot of that it's related to where he was drafted. It's not his fault that somebody made the choice to draft up and take him over Mahomes and Watson. I mean, if he was drafted in the second or third round, you're going to look at his play and say, okay, you're getting what you should get from a second or third round young quarterback, especially a guy that only started 1 year in college. But, when you get drafted where he got drafted, all the expectations go up, all the comparisons of Watson and the other guys that are just killing the league. That hurts him. I don't think it was ever like a wake up or like a lack of preparation, but maybe it was like, okay, I got my job back to begin the season. I lost my job, and now I've got my job back. If I don't do something now, I may be just a career backup. Nobody's ever going to give me that chance again to be a starter. So maybe it was.
What is it that he is doing well in this stretch?
Well, he can move in the pocket. And like I said, we're starting to get some offensive linemen back, but we're still not a top 15 offensive line. It's really tough to win in the NFL without a good offensive line. But just being able, if we don't pick up a blitz, if a guy like Aaron Donald or something like that, somebody like that just beats one of our linemen just straight off the block, he can move in the pocket and get rid of the football. Foles is kind of like a statue back there. He didn't have much of a chance to complete passes behind that O-line. Plus, you could run the Bears design run plays, RPOs for Mitch, too, that, you couldn't do with Foles. So he's doing some things in the pocket that are really helping us out a lot. But the play calling, just getting the run game going has been the biggest thing. Is we actually, for the first time all season, have a play action game, which we didn't have because before this stretch, we were 70 yards a game, 78 yards a game. I think we were last or next to last in the NFL. But over this 4-game win streak, we're up to 139 yards a game on the ground. So just being able to run the football, run play action, run some of those RPOs, it's really what Mitch's game is. Mitch isn't a drop back in the pocket and throw the ball 50 times like a Mahomes. So
Was there a concern with the loss of Jordan Howard, especially him going to Philadelphia? And how do you feel like the running game has stepped up?
Yeah, Montgomery, I always thought Montgomery was the man. We drafted him pretty high. We traded away all of our first round picks for the last 3 or 4 seasons. So when we draft somebody in the second round, that's kind of like our first round pick. So I think him coming in, he just gave me the feeling he could always get the job done. It was just getting the offensive line working, finding a scheme that was allowing us a run game to find a run game. But there are times where we did miss the power back of Jordan Howard on the goal line. Montgomery's more of a cut and slash kind of guy. So, but I thought, the run game in the NFL is, I think it's more about your offensive line than it is your running back. I think at any given time, there are 40 or 50 guys hanging around the NFL as running backs that are capable of having 100-yard games or multi-touchdown games with the right offensive line and right scheme combination.
When it comes to the prediction for the Super Bowl, who do you have coming out of the AFC? Who do you have coming out of the NFC? And what will the final score be?
Kansas City is still, I just still think it's tough. It's going to be tough to beat them. They're just so tough. Mahomes is he's magic back there, man. He's something we've never seen before. I can see them being that 10-year dynasty that we just went through with the Patriots. I know it's harder in today's game, but that's just what I see. And the NFC is wide open, but if I had to pick, I'm going to say New Orleans. I think Breeze has one last run in him to get that team to the Super Bowl. They have a very underrated defense. Kamara's a monster. Thomas is healthy. That gives him a top tier wide out. So I would say Kansas City, New Orleans, and I just think Kansas City goes back to back. I'd say 35-31. Kansas City comes out on top again.
And I think everybody's expecting it to be a high-scoring Super Bowl. And I know, of course, with those two offenses, defense might be at a premium, but you never know.
You never know. Yeah, it was the Rams Super Bowl a couple of years ago. It was like 14-3. So every once in a while, it seems like once a decade, once every 8 to 10 years, you'll get a defensive game thrown in there, which I love as a defensive line coach and defensive minded coach. I kind of love that kind of stuff. So, but the shootouts are more fun for the NFL. It's more fun for the casual fan that only tunes in for the Super Bowl or only tunes into the NFL, a few times a year. So. But either way, I think it'll be a great game. But I do think the NFC is wide open. There's not really, other than whoever comes out of the NFC East, I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle, New Orleans, or any of those teams push their way there. Russell Wilson's amazing, man. He can do more with less. They've had some offensive line issues, and some of the stuff he does outside of the pocket is just amazing.
Who do you think would be a bigger threat for the Chiefs in the AFC? I know that everybody has been picking them as a favorite, but who do you see could give Kansas City some trouble?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Buffalo, just as Buffalo, when they get hot, they can score with them. They're used to playing in the cold weather. The cold weather wouldn't affect them. Other than that, Miami's an up-and-coming team, but I just don't think they're there yet. If they get in, I think Buffalo would be that team that could be like have a great AFC championship game with them.
Is there any way people can reach out to you, talk about the Bears and things like that and your predictions? What's the best way people can reach out to you?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Just search Kemp. I'll pop up. Not too many people with my name. I'm not much of a Twitter guy. I do have a Twitter handle, but I'm usually more on the group discussions on Facebook and Instagram and that kind of stuff. So if you want to reach out to me and talk some Bears football, we'll link on Facebook and we'll hook it up.